All right. So now we are live. Okay. So welcome back again this week, Miss Harriet. One of the things that I'm curious about is what has been some of the messages you've seen or you've gotten from like some of the conversations we've done in the prior weeks.
The feedback has been positive. I've gotten a lot of this is great. I love what you guys are doing. I'm loving this information. I've gotten where we come out and do small group sessions, right? I've gotten, of course, questions about can you guys come maybe try to think about talk about some of these things, but it's been overwhelmingly positive. Really, really
Okay.
good in the feedback.
Good.
What are
Good.
you hearing?
I'm hearing some similar things. I mean, people are like, "Hey, you know what? I'm glad y'all talked about that because I never thought about that." Or, the one that always gets me at times when people are like, "Hey, I'm sorry I missed it." Um, and it's one of those things that lets me know, like, "Oh wow, people are like expecting and looking
Uh-huh.
forward to it."
It's a good feeling though.
It is. It is. It is. Yeah, definitely some questions have come up. Okay, and I think for me, I like the fact that people are actually starting to think about the operational side of running a church.
Right.
Um, because as we say every week, the goal is to really shine a light on some of those topics that people aren't as familiar with or they don't think about, but those are the type of things that will end the church. Those are
That's
the
right.
type of things that will stop you from actually being able to reach the people that you're trying to reach. So I'm very happy about that. Also, I did want to share this. I text Jeffrey about this morning, and for some reason this morning, the a song was on my mind, and I was like, this is the result of being friends with Jeffrey Lampkin. And I started singing the song, and
What
Lola
was the
was like,
song? What's the song?
it was from the Mississippi Mass Choir,
Oh,
When
that
I
really is
Rose.
Jeffrey Lampkin. That really is that's deep.
And I started singing the song, and Lola was like, "What are you singing?" I was like, "You never heard this song
She didn't
before?"
know that song?
Well, then I had to remember, like,
She's not
Lola,
African American. She's African.
yes, Lola, yeah, she is completely 100% African, and
They
I was
wasn't
like, "Oh
singing that in
yeah,
Kenya.
yeah." They wasn't singing
That's
that in Kenya and Nigeria, so
no.
I I played the song for her, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, like this is like somebody's grandma up there
Yeah, it
singing." I'm
was.
like,
It
"Yep."
was. Yeah, you should have showed her the video of the old lady singing. But I like that song. I do. I do.
Yeah, she heard it and she was like, "I like the song too." And I was just like, "Yeah, this is the result of being friends with Jeffrey Lampkin,
Absolutely.
these old
Because he's
school
random like
gospel
that.
choir."
That's what he plays, right? And sings around the house. Yes, he does. Good stuff.
So I was like, "Yeah, I definitely got to tell Harry about that when we hop on, because I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, that is not normally in my playlist."
No, see, you rubbing off on Jeffrey with the good financial sense, and he rubbing off on you with old Negro spiritual hymns and quiet songs. Nothing wrong with it. I love that music, but yeah, that's random in the morning.
Gotcha. All right. So I know we were talking last week, we talked about the seven things, the seven responsibilities of the board. And I know we mentioned that we were going to come back to that, which we will come back to that. But I know I had a couple of churches that were talking about like now they're doing some revivals, having guest speakers in, which is why I was like, let's put a pause on the board responsibilities because I want to go one by one on those. But what I wanted to talk about was, some of the tax and the legal, some of the tax and the legal matters when it comes down to bringing in a guest speaker, a guest singer, a guest musician, or a guest minister, because I get the sense that a lot of churches are thinking about, hey, we want this person to come in and just think, hey, we're just going to set it up. They're going to come in, and that's all we need to think about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, I would say from your perspective, have there been any like legal topics or scenarios that you have seen come up when it comes down to bringing in a guest minister, a guest musician, a guest singer, or any other type of ministers or guest?
So I think some of the things that I you wanna know what I've seen? You know, I have to think and be politically correct on here. I got a lot of Lord help me say the right thing. Lord help me not reveal nobody business. Okay, so some of the things that I've seen, some of the things you want to avoid. Let's avoid some pitfalls.
Yes.
I think it's good if we know on the front end, is there an honorarium? Does this guest pastor or guest artist have a fee? Okay, what is that amount? Because some people charge money up front. Some people say whatever you give me. The things that I've seen go left, or maybe it was whatever you gave me and you gave them $100 and or the honorarium was $5,000, and at the end of the night after they performed the song, you ain't have all the money. Usually with the singers, like, my husband books national recording artists, so I know with singers, it's typically half up front. We pay their travel, lodging, per diem, and the other half when they touch down at the airport and car service picking them up. And I think sometimes you have to do that to avoid pitfalls. But the things that I've seen is just knowing what the conversation is. And then with musical guests, not so much pastors. All right, so it's $10,000 for a 45-minute set. I'm going to sing my best 4 songs, and that's it. So knowing what the terms are of the arrangement, right? If it's a pastor, what are you doing? So I just think it's the details. The devil is always in the details. And so I've seen it work well when we know what the price is, be it honorarium or something that we're going to give them. The church can budget and afford it. One thing that always concerns me, and this is no shade, but I feel like when we invite people in, either they're going to come for free. But if you ever been in the church service and they took up the offering, then they went in the back and counted, came back out, said, hey, we need to pay the speaker. We need more money. Can y'all give some more? Dig a little deeper. That's their line. Let's dig a little deeper, right? That just made me uncomfortable when I'm sitting in church. I'm like, do we have a budget that we plan? So those are some of my high level things that I've seen that, like, hey, let's do this differently. Yes.
I would say the same. I've seen some of those. Like, I'll give an example of, and I'll try to do this without revealing anybody's business.
Don't say no names. Don't say no names. Lord, please touch Terrell in my prayer, not to reveal nobody's name. Amen.
So I was talking to one of the board members of a church, and they were like, they had an issue because they brought in a musician or a musical artist, and they were singing the songs, and there was a song that they wanted, that I guess the pastor wanted them to sing. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they got it in writing in the agreement. And so afterward, the person didn't sing the song, mm-hmm. and they had a little brief altercation, or a verbal disagreement. A verbal disagreement. So
this stuff happens for real. We've seen a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they had a verbal disagreement. And I think, the singer was saying, well, I just didn't feel moved in the spirit to sing that song. And the person, all right, well, we hired you to come in. And the one question that I asked him, I was like, well, did you reach that agreement before they got there? That was the song that you wanted them to sing? It's like, right. Well, we don't think we laid that out. And I'm like, yeah, see, yeah. I'm like, you really don't have as much of an argument because you made an on-the-spot request. And yeah, I wouldn't completely say that they were wrong for not singing that song. But I do think, like I said, one of the things we've said about some of the other like contract discussions is it allows you to lay things out. Because from I would say another scenario that I've seen from a financial standpoint is where a guest came in, they traveled in, there was no discussion about what types of expenses the church would cover. So the person booked a first class ticket. They booked a really nice hotel. They ordered room service. They went out to eat. They brought their spouse with them. And at the, before going up to the preach or whatever, they handed over their receipts. And now you got bad emotions going on before this person goes up to the preach.
It'd be just like that too. It'd be just like that. But we got to talk about these things because now the spirit can't even flow because people get angry. This is a lot, but it happens more often than you would believe.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things that I was telling someone, I was like, I know we like to lean on the fact that, hey, we're spiritual, we're walking in faith, but the flesh is still very real.
And
Because I mean,
the church
in
is a
such
business. Like that
absolutely,
altercation, what happened, that the verbal altercation when the pastor didn't get his song request, it's his church. We done paid you X amount of money. I want this song. And then a lot of pastors aren't used to getting no, because what they say goes at the church. And so it's just like, I can see that being a problem.
yeah.
But I side with the artist. So I sent over my paperwork beforehand. This was not pre-negotiated. Not happening. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things I will say I've learned being around musicians a bit more of sometimes when you ask for certain songs, there is some preparation that goes in certain songs to where some songs they just aren't ready to sing on the spot. I mean, because and I think because it's one of those things that I compared this to. I was explaining this to another church leader. I was like, if you invited let's say if you invited a guest, a guest minister in, and let's say you agreed that they would preach, 2 services, and let's say at the last minute you threw an extra 2 on, would you be mad if they didn't have sermons to cover those extra 2 that you threw on at the last minute? And I'm like, that's part of the reason where the discussion beforehand, it really comes into play. And I think even going back to that example about, the discussion of what expenses will be covered and what expenses won't, because there are some ministers who travel more than just them. They may travel with a entourage of people.
Right.
And I think that that's something that I guess, have you seen churches running to issues with that where they bring in a guest speaker that comes with multiple people?
Absolutely, and not just in the getting there. So it's like for the church, we gonna pay for 2 tickets. I'm gonna get you a flight and 1 companion, armor bearer, wife, side chick, your choice. That's between you and your government. Okay? But then all these other people come, and so we need hotels, and then we gotta go out to dinner. You want me to feed your whole crew? You know what I'm saying? We want to put everybody on. This is a lot. And so the church might not have budgeted for that. You know what I'm saying? So it becomes, whose responsibility is this? Can you not deliver this song? Can you not preach this sermon without these 30 people with you? Not 30, maybe a good 5 though, right? And so it becomes an issue. So you have to kind of clearly spell out, this is what we're willing to do. The things you mentioned, travel. I'll buy your airfare. And I think that the church should pay for these things directly and not even reimburse them. Buy your airfare. We're going to put you up in this hotel. If your preference is 5-star only, that's fine. You're going to be here, whatever. We're going to give you meals, whatever. Sometimes I've seen pre-COVID, I saw car service. After COVID, Jeffrey brought in some stars where, hey, I want to rent a car because I don't even want to be in the car with the driver because COVID is so prevalent. So, but those things are always spelled out on the front end, and it works better that way, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, because I mean, I think even from a tax perspective, one of the things that we're running into now, like I mentioned it last week about churches getting their 1099s done. Like when it comes down to having guest speakers in, like what I don't think people realize is sometimes some of those costs that you are paying for that person actually may be subject to being included in that 1099. So just for those that don't understand what the 1099 is, so whenever you have someone who is not an employee that is providing some type of service for your organization, at the end of the year, the IRS says if you paid any non-employees more than $600, the IRS expects you to file a 1099. Even if you are a church or a non-for-profit organization, you are still expected to file a 1099. Now, and I think a lot of people get that confused because they're like, oh, we're a church, we don't have to file anything with IRS. You don't have to file a tax return with the IRS, but you do still have to file your 1099s the same way you have to file, like, your payroll tax returns. And that's where I see a lot of churches get into some issues of, if you have not stipulated what expenses you are going to pay, getting that reviewed and approved by the board or whoever makes those leadership decisions. Now you have a record, because once you write those checks, you have to be prepared to actually put that in a 1099 so you don't run into issues with the IRS.
That's real. You said you are expected to. So I just want to key in, it's not optional. Mandatory. Now, does that apply whether you are a nonprofit status or not? Is that evenly across the board?
Yes, a
Okay.
1099 is, and I would say in general, people should approach it from, it is generally expected and required. Is for you to file a 1099. Now, of course, probably just like you've seen when it comes down to the law, there are some exceptions. But I always tell people just prepare yourself to file a 1099, because if you're working with whoever the accountant is for your church or your organization, and let's say if you are not required to file it, like your accountant tells you you're not required, at least you're prepared in the event that you do. And I think to get prepared, one of the very important things that every organization should ask for before you get anybody to do any services is ask them to fill out a W-9. And what a W-9 does is the IRS form W-9. It will provide you with all the necessary information to be able to fill out a 1099. And I think it's better for you to ask for it up front as opposed to then trying to chase people down at the end of the year.
Let me give y'all a true story about me and Terrell. So Terrell just told y'all some real stuff. Anybody you pay more than $600 to, you're gonna have to give them a 1099. Now, in my office, it's cool because people on payroll, I got all that stuff. I had contractors do work for me. And let's talk about chasing folks down. I got people I was trying to get before January 31st who have not called me back yet. So get everything you need from this person on the front end before you pay them. Words to live by. Things Terrell taught me. We won't have these problems at the end of 2022, Terrell. You find out about a checkbook. You stop me, you got this W-9, please put your social security or EIN number on this paper. Sign this, I can send it to my accountant.
Yes. I mean, and I think it makes it so much easier, because I do think from one standpoint, it's like, unless you actually get that up front, I mean, the person, they may not have any ill intentions. It's just after they've done the work for your job, you pay them, they're on to the next things that they're doing. Yeah. So when you're like, hey, I know this after the fact, but can you fill this out? They may easily forget because they're on to the next things. Right. And so it definitely is much easier up front. Like, hey, our accountant said, and if you're working in the church organization, just tell them, hey, our friend who is an accountant, Terrell, said we need this W-9 filled out before we can pay you.
You will get it if it's a stipulation for payment. So a couple of things just sounds like you need to send beforehand. An agreement, and not just words on a paper, I'll come preach or sing for X, with terms and expectations. Travel, how many services they need to do, song list if it's an artist, the more the details, the better. And it can seem cumbersome. Like, oh, this is the church, we're doing business with the church. I love the example about the artist. Why couldn't the artist just sing a piece of the song? You ain't had to sing. This man's anniversary. Sing the song. Sing the song. Right? But if we got it spelled out, then you don't have to go through these things. Same thing with the W-9. Just get it on the front end. Send it as a package together, right? Let them ask them, what are your travel requirements? Something else about travel that I had a situation come up. So with travel and paying for lodging when people are speaking, per the IRS, a speaker has to travel more than 50 miles from their home for travel to be a reimbursable expense. So it's like if it's 50 miles or less, they can drive. So I had somebody who was going to preach across town that was staying in hotels, and it came up in an IRS audit. It did. It like the code says, no, you must travel more than 50 miles for overnight lodging. You do not need a hotel to drive 15 miles. Yeah, we see some things, okay? We see some things. Yes.
And it was, we laugh about it, but it is very, very true. I mean, you see, the amount of things that I think, and I will say, I'm trying to say this in a way so you guys don't feel like I'm trying to be judgmental, or I guess you say, I'm not trying to judge people for whatever it is that they need to do. And the best way I can describe it is, when you think about, let's say, an athlete before they get ready for a game, sometimes they have some different rituals or there different things that they do to get themselves in the right mindset. Now, when you're bringing in guests, one of the things that I think churches are not prepared for is you may be used to how your pastor does things before a message and stuff like that. But when you start bringing in other people, you are bringing in a human being that may have some very specific requirements before they go on the pulpit to preach or before they go up to sing. And I will say I've seen more I guess you would say rituals from singers than I have from ministers, but they do exist. And like, you want to make sure that that stuff is known beforehand. Like, if they want a certain type of candy, and let's say, if they want Starburst and they only want the yellow
Red
ones,
and the pink. I've seen that on a rider. Yes.
to where it's just like that stuff, like not having a discussion about that beforehand could then they're in a bad mood, they don't give the best service,
Right.
then you feel like we paid this person all this money and this is what we got. And it can be a very awkward situation, because I would say even outside of a church example, like I went to a conference once, and conference with a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and they invited a guest speaker in, and I was in the audience, and I'm not gonna lie, like the actual, like, because they didn't do it like they just gave a mic and the gentleman did a speech. It was the CEO of the company and the guest speaker. They did kind of a Q&A, kind of fireside chat.
Okay.
After hearing the conversation, I was like, I know the organization just paid this man like $50,000, and that was a waste of money.
It be like that sometimes. Yeah, it be like that sometimes. Yes. Yes.
And I think a lot of it goes back to some of the same stuff we talked about, where it's like there were certain things that they wanted him to talk about,
He
but
didn't
it
speak
was
at
not
all.
in the agreement.
Mhm.
To where I'm just like, you know what, this could have been a lot of these issues could have been resolved if there would have been some discussions on the front end. So I think of, when it comes down to, getting things in writing beforehand, I do think it starts to set a pattern of, where you're planning ahead of time. And I think one of the things that I've seen churches do is you come up with a template of, hey, if we're going to bring in a guest speaker, here are the three things we need to do before we say yes. First is, you got to make sure theologically that, hey, we're in alignment, because I've seen some churches do that too, where they brought in someone that had a very big name, but you guys did not agree theologically on how to interpret different stuff in the Bible. And that person got up and they said some stuff, and it was just like they literally had to pull the plug out of the speakers because they didn't agree. I'm like, yeah, you should have checked that beforehand before you even brought this person in. And I think also on the financial side of making sure that you get the W-9 and you spell out what the church is going to cover, whether it's going to be a reimbursement or the church is going to pay for it directly.
Mhm.
And then I think on the contractual side of really writing and spelling those things out, like what are you expecting and what should that person deliver? Also stipulate when the terms that you will pay them. Because I do think some people don't spell that out, like, hey, half up front, half when you land, or half afterwards, or hey, you'll get all of it afterwards. Sometimes people don't spell that out.
Right.
Now, when it outside of, like I said, the contract and the terms, are there any other factors that you've seen, legal factors you've seen around bringing in guests and to a church?
No, so crazy too, because I am an attorney. I don't like to sue churches. I always say, can we work this out? Let's be above board. But I've had people call me for violations of verbal agreements. They came, they were supposed to get this, they didn't get it. Hey, I don't want you to sue them. Hey, I can't sue this church. Right? I ain't the law firm for that. Now, but those are some of the things I see, because when it goes left on the front end, on the legal side, it's, hey, these are the terms. When the legal side get brought on the back end, terms were not adhered to. Right? So we got a couple of things I've seen. Church has put it out there that this big name person is coming. Maybe we sold tickets on Eventbrite. Maybe so happened. Life happened. Person don't show. Now here goes the church. Well, you liable, right? I can't refund these people all this money. So there are legal ramifications that come up, and this is why you need agreements. So on the back end, I've just seen something went left, and now we have to either stick somebody to the fire for the terms of the agreement not being met, or we didn't have an agreement in writing because it's the church, and we do business with handshakes. So now it's like I want to sue on an oral contract. Those are just some of the things I've seen on the back end.
Now, I guess speaking of a oral contract, is how difficult is it to actually sue someone on the basis of an oral contract?
It just depends on whether or not the other person can prove that they conform to the verbal agreement. But it's hard to say if so and so, if the head trustee lies, say we never told that man we pay him all that money. He can't preach. Well, you know what? Who agree? Or here's something else I see. You need to be who has the authority to set what it's going to be. So if you got a pastor who brings in a guest speaker and we're gonna give you $5,000, but the chair of the deacon board say, or the trustee board say, we're not spending more than $2,000 for this. Then the person comes in and they speak on the authority of the pastor, right? Mm-hmm. But the pastor, the deacons, and the trustees are saying he don't have the authority to say, well, we're gonna pay you. He didn't get approval for this. I've seen that problem because the speaker is short now $3,000. Whose fault is it, right? So those are just some of the things. And you would think that in the church we wouldn't have these issues. Happen all the time now.
It's very interesting. I can definitely see that happening. And I think even last week when we talked about, the board and we talked about that concept of apparent authority, that's one of those things that I don't think a lot of church leadership organizations realize is that oftentimes the pastor has apparent authority to external parties. Like the pastor can make decisions. Now, in your bylaws, it may say differently, but to an external person, they may be in all good faith, just trusting that, hey, what the pastor said, he has the ability and the authority to tell me that. So I'm going to trust it. Exactly. I mean, and I think that for a lot of, going back to the topic of the board, which we're going to go back and revisit those 7 things from the board responsibilities. But I do think one of those things around the oversight is really laying out, who has the authority to enter into an agreement, like really the leadership of the church establishing, does the pastor have the sole authority to be able to invite a guest in and agree to how much we are going to pay them? Or is that a decision that has to be made by the board?
Right. And one of the things that I recommend, I'm sorry, go ahead. I remember. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
One of the things that I recommend to churches that I advise so that the pastor, it's not like the board is micromanaging the pastor. I recommend when y'all do first, I recommend that y'all have an annual budget. And I recommend that a line item on the annual budget is honorariums for guests. So if we got $200,000 to spend on guests for the year, then the pastor knows kind of what his allotment is for the year, and he can invite people accordingly. When the $200,000 is up, then I guess you better stop inviting people or give them your check, right? However, if we have those parameters in place, then the pastor can kind of, because if the Lord drop on a pastor heart, hey, you need to get so-and-so to come in here and bring a word to your house. You want them to have the ability to do that, but you want it to be in the confines of the church's budget. So I always recommend when y'all make an annual budget for the next year, just get a pastor a speaker allowance. And he kind of knows from the beginning, and then he can kind of manage that money. And like as the people come in, whoever's doing the finances and the bookkeeping saying, okay, that person was 20 grand, you got 180 left for the year. That's what I recommend.
Yeah. And I think that one is a really good one. I mean, which is a great last point to end on, because I think next week we're going to go a little bit deeper into, the boards, their fiscal responsibility. So their responsibility for financial oversight, because, and just to kind of give a hint on some of the things that I have seen come up that have caused issues where one is they don't set a budget at all. It's just like, hey, we just gonna kind of do what we do. And also in other cases where there is no clear or clean record of what they have done in the prior year. So then that makes it even more difficult for them to even come up with a budget because they have nothing to really kind of give
Go by.
them a reality check on.
Uh-huh.
And then I do think also and this is something that a lot of churches experience in 2020 and 2021, where when you set a budget, the thing is the amount of money you expect to come in from those that support the ministry and those that are giving, what actually comes in may be different. So sometimes you'll have to adjust the budget. And I
Right.
think that's one of those responsibilities that falls with the board of bringing it up and making sure that you're having the regular reviews on that. But we're going to dive a little bit more into that probably next week as we kind of go down that list. But as it pertains to, legal and tax matters from bringing guests into the church, any other final thoughts you wanted to share on that, Harriet?
I think we hit him. I'll just recap. Make sure that you guys have an agreement in place that's detailed on what you expect as the church and what that guest speaker or guest pastor expects, right? Compensation, travel, specific requests, things to stay away from. Just spell it out. Then, in addition to sending them an agreement, give them a W-9, right? So, because we do that beforehand, and I'll speak for all speakers everywhere. It's really, really nice when you're speaking somewhere where you don't have to worry about, I wonder if these people are going to pay me. So stay within your means and in your budget. Create a budget. And so I think putting those into practice just makes it go smooth for everybody involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, thanks for tuning in again. We will be back Mondays at 12:30. I guess let's just go ahead and say next week is Valentine's Day. Are we doing this next week? Or are we taking
Well, so, me and Jeffrey Levin are workaholics. Though that's what you and Lola got planned. 12:30 in the day. We probably gonna do something that evening. So I'm game if you and Lola game. Y'all gonna be in the country?
Yes, we will be. As of right now, what I know is I am available.
If it changes, we'll let y'all know.
Yes, we will let y'all know if it changes. So thanks for tuning in this week.